She had had enough of this. She stalked up to him. I didn't save you because I thought you were cute or because I liked you. He didn't seem intimidated at all by her tone or proximity. He stared at her with his gold eyes. Then why did you save me? Hara sighed. Because, apparently, I'm a sucker. Now go find something useful to do. I have to get us out of here before the original owners of the blazing blunderbuss track down another ship to come after us. Gideon shrugged at her suggestion. Are you going to tell me where we're going? She answered in a defeated tone. Home. I'm going home. And apparently she was taking a madman with her. Chapter 3. Gideon looked over the terrain. He had been here many years ago when he had first come to this planet. It was so lush and green compared to the fireball he had left behind. All the dragons on planet Earth were refugees. They had left their own planet because it had come too close to a comet and was mostly a wasteland of fire. When it was deemed that their world was dying, all their scientists had gotten together. They had come up with two plans. One was to dig into the crust of the planet and live underground. Since they were a race of flyers, many had deemed that a fate worse than death. The females embraced this plan more than the males, as they were used to laying eggs in caves and feeling the earth all around them. The other plan was for them to abandon the planet altogether and leave for another plane. They had some success going to places which were like their own by using elements which were common to both realms. After the comet had destroyed their planet, the scientists had scrambled for these elements. In the end, they had used petrified wood and the horn of an animal along with a stone that grew from crystals. They had brought the dragons here. Most of the dragons who had come to Earth had been male, as the females had stayed behind with a few males who could breed with them. When Gideon had arrived here, he had thought he gave up his chance for family and adding a female to his collection. Most of the other dragons had been bitter and had attacked the humans. If they could not procreate, then they could at least collect. Gideon had come for the sky. He turned to look at Hara. She worked with the logbooks left by the previous owners. Maybe he could do some collecting of his own, after all. He had heard of the others bonding with humans, and it allowed them to fully come to this plane. That meant breeding with a human woman and having children, a dream many of his kind had abandoned when they had come here many years ago. Some dragons had bred with human women, and many of the children still could change into a dragon, though humans had no inkling of the half-breed's abilities. These children were mostly nobility. Gideon had never bothered with politics. Dragon or human. Gideon hadn't realized he desired a family until he had seen Hara stepping into trouble to save a stranger like him. Now all he had to do was convince her that she wanted to be part of his collection. Gideon was pressed up against the glass of the bridge like a child against a candy store window. He said almost conversationally, "Hara, I think you might want to see this." Hara had read through the logs to see exactly whom they had taken the airship from. The ship only went to ports which were in the no-man's land between the Empire and the rest of the world, so they were definitely pirates or arms smugglers. They were not people anyone wanted to mess with. Hara was not amused to be interrupted. "What?" She snapped the word out and glanced up. Her hands went limp and dropped the logbook. Another airship approached them at speed. Hara swore and rushed to the window. There were no flags on the airship, but the envelope that held its helium was painted black. It must be the pirates coming for their ship. Except it came from the wrong direction. There were mountains close by though, probably where the pirates lay in wait for someone to come close enough for them to attack. Darn it, they had fallen into a trap and it was plain bad luck. She glared at the fop. He had brought bad luck right from the start. With a crew, she would have probably tried to run or fight back. With only the three of them on board, they didn't have any real options, except maybe to die horribly or die quickly. Hara decided she would die fighting. Hara rushed to the speaking tube. She yelled, "Henry, we have company. Stoke it up." Henry's voice replied over the tube. "Aye aye, Captain." Hara spun the wheel and said to Gideon, who was still staring out the window, "Maybe you could be useful and man one of the guns. Otherwise, it won't matter how fast we are." "Not that it'll matter, we're dead meat, anyway." The last bit, she muttered to herself. Gideon turned to her. "You don't think you can outrun them?" She worked vigorously at half a dozen crewmen's jobs on the bridge. "Not today. We would need more crew to man the boilers to be able to outrun that, let alone trim sails so we can maneuver. I'd be tempted to shoot them out of the sky, but we don't even have enough crew to man all the guns." He came up to her and offered his hands. "Take these off." Hara heard the crack of a cannon blast and spun the wheel to avoid it. The blazing blunderbuss shuddered as the cannonball clipped one side of the ship. Gideon shoved his wrists in her face and demanded, "Take these off now." Hara shoved him away. "I don't think we have time for this, Gideon. We're about to be killed by a bunch of thieving pirates." He caught her arm. "We will be if you don't remove these bands right now." She looked down at his wrists and saw he was wearing ivory and ebony bracelets. A little girly, but then, he was a fop. They were tight, so they weren't the kind that was slipped over the hands. Instead, there was a lock on one side and hinges on the other. The lock was a simple thing, but it needed 2 hands to unlock it. Hara grabbed his wrists and snapped off the first bracelet. She did the same to the other and turned back to the wheel. She said over her shoulder, "Now go put some holes in those pirates." He disappeared without a comment. They were definitely going to die if they couldn't even shoot back. A series of cracks and the airship shuddered and creaked as wood shattered. The engine wheezed and she knew it wouldn't be long before they were in serious trouble. An air current hit the side of their airship, buffeting them. She struggled to keep her footing and to keep the ship on course as the whole craft tilted sideways. The window on the bridge darkened as something flew in front of it. All she saw was gold scales. Heck, it was a dragon. Hara tried to get the airship to move, but the wheel was unresponsive. That last hit must have been to the rudder or to one stabilizer on the side. With the dragon in the air as well as the pirate, they really had no chance. Hara closed her eyes for a moment and prayed to the gods to take her soul out of the hellfire she was in. She braced for the dragon to attack, but it didn't attack their ship at all. Instead, it turned on the other ship. She went to the window to look out at the pirate ship and the golden dragon. The dragon wrapped itself around the wooden ship and ripped into the envelope above it like a 2-year-old at a birthday party. The pirate ship lost altitude quickly. The dragon flapped his large leathery wings and pulled away. The pirate airship sank down, and it was clear it would not be a problem any longer. The dragon hovered for a moment, then headed towards them. Hara ran back to the wheel. She wasn't sure what she could do against a dragon, but she wasn't going to go down without a fight. The airship shuddered, but nothing else happened. She turned when Gideon walked in. He tucked his hands into his pockets and walked to the windows to look outside again. Hara asked, "Where the heck did you go?" Gideon glanced over his shoulder and had to flick his head to get his hair out of his eyes long enough to actually look at her. "I thought I'd go for a walk." He turned back to look out of the window. She opened her mouth to demand an explanation when things clicked in her head. She set the wheel and stalked up to him. Hara asked, her voice a little shrill, "Are you a dragon?" He turned to face her fully and leaned against the frame of the window. His eyes were warm as he gazed at her. Gideon asked, "Is that going to be a problem?" Hara blinked in confusion at his nonchalant tone. "A problem? You're a dragon." Her words went high-pitched near the end of her sentence. She coughed to cover her embarrassment. Obviously concerned about her answer. "Yes. But I asked you if it'll be a problem. I kind of want to know your answer. He was a dragon. The kind that ate people. Why would he care what people thought of him, let alone her? She studied him for a long moment, waiting for her thoughts to unscramble, until she could string some words together. Why the heck would it be a problem that you're a blasted dragon? You're a dragon, you can do what the heck you like. You can leave right now if you want to. Go anywhere you like.